All right. All right. So I'm here with Grace Redman, and I want to talk about her new book and talk about this journey that she's been on, that you've been on.
Thank you.
And I remember we went out to dinner recently, and I had so many questions about the process in your book. And I said, but I want to save it for the podcast because I'm super curious on, you know, the process of you writing the book. And then you had some health issues come up, and I'd love to get into that with you. And then love to talk to you about, our favorite subject, law of attraction, and
Yes.
how much I love your book, which is all about that,
Thank you.
and it's geared towards women. I mean, what I'll do is I'll read your bio, and then you can tell me more about your book, and and we can take it from there. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right.
I'm happy to be here with you.
Yes, ma'am. So Grace Redman is an entrepreneur who has owned and managed one of the most successful staffing firms in the Bay Area for over 20 years. She is also a success coach and the author of the best-selling book, Can I Live? Dare to Go from Effed Up to Fabulous. Grace works with ambitious, heart-centered women to help them elevate their confidence, optimize their talents, and increase their prosperity mindset. As a result, they create the fabulous life they have been dreaming of and inspire other women to do the same. Grace is also the host of Real Talk with Grace Redman, a podcast where she chats with amazing people from her circles and communities who have overcome challenges and created amazing. Grace loves celebrating and highlighting the heroes in her own backyard. Grace has faced many adversities. Those adversities didn't stop her from achieving personal and professional success. Through those adversities, she gained wisdom and experience. Yes, she has. She is intuitive, real, fun, and takes a realistic approach to coaching. She believes that we can create soul-centered, fulfilling lives and businesses without sacrificing ourselves or our relationships. She has a passion for inspiring ambitious women to dig deep and push beyond mediocrity. She is a visionary and has a wide range of methods and tools to guide those women to fabulous.
Oh gosh.
I like that. I like that bio.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm like listening to that. I'm like, who is that?
I know. I feel the same when someone reads my bio. I'm like, but I mean, I'm resonating with it, and
Thank you.
you inspire the shit out of me. And I just liked your video. I saw your video earlier, and I'm like, so badass that you're making these videos. And I'm thinking about the people who you're inspiring and helping, these little tidbits that you do,
Thank you.
these videos that you keep going with, your podcast and the book, which is, if I can say, I don't read, I'm very particular in the books I read, especially when it comes to law of attraction. But man, I loved how helpful it is and how deep that you go and how you organized it. And then I love the little processes at the end. Such a helpful book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell me about what it was like to write that, and the journey of this, the journey that you've been on for a little while now.
Sure. So can I tell them how we met?
No. We can't do that.
Okay.
No, let's do it.
So when I started on my coaching journey, I was told to go and research coaches in the area. And so I naturally went to LinkedIn and I put coaches, and, this gentleman came up, and Mark Shihadeh. And I was like, oh gosh, he looks like one of my, he could be my relative, because that's, that last name is in my mom's family. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool to see another, Palestinian coach. I was like, super cool. Okay. And so then I go to my first, coaching certification class, and it was, our instructor was this gentleman named Luke. right?
Shout out to Luke Benoit.
Yeah, shout out to Luke. And he says to us, one of my good friends is going to come in and is going to talk to us a little bit, about what he does. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So next thing I know, his friend walks in, and who do I see? Is I see you, and I'm like, holy cow, that's the guy that I just, looked up on LinkedIn. You sat down, did your spiel, your presentation to us, and then I run up to him like, I think we're cousins. And like that story, I love it. It's so synchronistic and crazy. And then you're, really instrumental, because I hired you after that to help me through some of my own challenges. Like we did the tapping, and so I want to thank you. It was not a coincidence that we met, and then I also get to say that you're my cousin, and what a crazy way to meet.
Such a crazy story, right?
In the universe, I mean, honestly, that's definitely, a testimony to the universe, really.
Yeah, it really is, to getting these little things, because obviously I think the more we buy into this, the law of attraction, leading edge law of attraction principles, and how we can create our life and attract what we want, a lot of it just sounds out there, and can you believe it? What? But when you have these little things like that, and you're like, all right, there's something going on here.
Mhm.
And the more that we can have things like that can, show us that it's really really out there, and there's something going on there. And then I would say the same maybe for you, is like you get excited about, I get excited about this whole the subject of it. And I remember when I first discovered it many years ago, my aunt sent me a Abraham Hicks workshop tape. Actually, it wasn't a workshop, it was just a general, that was like a basic tape. And I thought it was kind of weird, and the channeling was weird and all that. I was young, in my 20s, and I was channeling, but I thought the information was amazing. Anyway, I set out to I really want to master, because I tried it, and you try different things, trying to attract what you want, but sometimes that doesn't work out. So yeah, so the more things like that, what you described, happens, the more you just want to, I think, lean into it more and just use it in your life and yeah.
Absolutely. And what I wanted to do, because I got turned on to the law of attraction. I've always read The Secret from years ago,
Yeah.
but I was taught to succeed, the hustle way, the 10x way, the grind way. And it worked, however, that completely burnt me out. And so when I got into coaching, 7 years ago, to get certified as a coach, I was turned on to, the spiritual community. And so I started to learn, so much about energy and attracting. And it was in that time where I immersed myself in Abraham Hicks. And I I wanted to write a book that incorporated the practical and, the principles, the spiritual, the laws of attraction, that made it easy for someone to understand and didn't really make them run away from it because it was too woo woo.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been really clear in all of your content. And I really like that about you. I mean, so if we can back up a little bit, just when I met you, it was so cool. I've never met another Palestinian or Arab who was into this stuff like I was, and you were right there,
Thank you.
and to get, how long have I known you now? 7, 8 years?
Yeah.
7, yeah. And I just, it's so cool. And to watch you and how you've studied, and you were always going to another workshop, and so, different modality, and you're always learning. And then your podcast, and you do it weekly, and yeah, it's just so cool to watch you. But yeah, and then your book,
Thank you.
which I really love. And I know Grace Redman, who wrote this book that I
You're
love.
silly.
Serious though.
It's
So yeah,
it's funny because, like you said earlier, so I wrote the book for, the audience, for women. And so in the book, I would say, I reference, hey girl. But I realized I've been getting messages from my male friends, and they're reading it and they're getting so much out of it. And so I was like, are you okay with me calling you girl throughout the book? And but
Yeah.
I think what the most important thing is, the concepts are universal.
Yeah.
I know there's a chapter in there talking about the kind of the feminine and the masculine. And I was talking to one of my male friends and I said, I know that maybe didn't resonate. However, what we came to the conclusion was it helped him like recognize like how us late, how we may think, like it gave him a different perspective that he didn't get before. So I found that was super cool to hear him say it gave him a different perspective that he didn't have before.
Yeah. I think obviously men can be not as much into this stuff as women are, but I'm meeting more and more men, and I read it and you kind of gave me that qualifier like, oh, well, I'm gearing it towards women, but anyone who's into this stuff and anyone who's an entrepreneur or wants to increase their confidence, wants to learn more about, how would you explain it? Like who's your audience? Who can read, who would you want to read your book?
Initially, anytime you begin on a journey of writing a book or coaching, they tell you, pick a niche, pick an audience.
Yeah.
And, when I did that, my audience was, it was geared towards women. However, now if I do something in the future, maybe I'll do something a little bit different, seeing, the interest that my male friends and colleagues have had in the book. So that's my audience, but I've learned that whoever's meant to read or listen to your material is going to, it doesn't matter, what their gender is. I think it's just the message can resonate regardless of what your gender is.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think if it's geared towards women and men who are inspired to read it and to get into it, what can it give them? How can it help them?
Sure. And you know what? There's so much information out there and there's so many books. And what I say is like, I really wrote this book from the heart and I talked about the concepts that worked for me. They may not work for everyone,
Yeah.
but these are the concepts that worked for me from my experience. So I didn't really put anything in there that I hadn't experienced myself. So this book is, it's real, it's honest, and it talks about the concepts that I use to kind of break out of dysfunction and to become healthier and to really to live a fabulous life. I do have a great life. And, although I've come all this way, I still face challenges. However, I go back to those basic concepts. Like
Yeah.
I'm not smarter than anyone else. I'm not better than anyone else. I'm not, I don't have the magic, sauce. I just go back to the basics.
Yeah. That's very evident in your content and in this book, the idea that you're real. And because there's this thing about, oh, I'm a life coach, so I can't talk about my problems because I need to help them. And this idea of being perfect or towards a guru or and I never wanted to do that. And I love how real you are.
Thank you. And
sharing your challenges, which makes people relate more because, everyone's got their stuff.
Everyone does.
Anthony Robbins does.
Everyone does. And we were raised, I know I was raised in an environment where you had to show up perfect. Like you could not let anyone know that there was anything going on. Like you had to everything's perfect, everything's fine. And that's not reality. Even though even though I live a great life, I still have challenges that I need to navigate. Maybe they're first world challenges, but still it's my challenge. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. And I don't want to show up and pretend like things are perfect.
Yeah.
Do I live a great life? Yes. Do I have a great, family? Do I have a great friend? Yes. There's so much in my life that's great. But as a human being, if I'm going to continue to grow and expand, I'm going to face challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, as I'm thinking, as you're talking, you're one of the most authentic leaders out there who are just, you're so and real that I, in my circle and that I see. Yeah, you don't have, you are, and I guess you've gotten comfortable of just being real about it. And what was I'm sure that, it's funny, like on our journey, when we're becoming a life coach and when we want to help others and when we want to do our own self-help, being able to be real and talk about the shit that we're going through, that's a journey in itself, and being vulnerable.
Totally.
So how did you make yourself more able to do that and to be more real and real?
That's a great question. I think part of it goes back to, growing up in an environment where everyone wore a mask. And there was a part of me that wasn't in alignment for me, although I did it, for a long time. It was important for me to show up real, because then I felt more authentic. Like, it didn't feel good to just wear a mask and say everything's okay. It felt better. And then what I noticed is, like, once I started opening up, and then I started having these deeper conversations, and that's what fueled me. So I think, thank you for that awareness. Once I started to be, real and start opening up, then I started to have better conversations and I started to connect. So I think it's in that connection, because, if anyone who knows me and is close to me and has spent time with me knows that connection to me is golden.
Yeah.
And so that's what I found. And, first of all, it felt out of alignment. I didn't want to wear the mask anymore. And then I found, as I became vulnerable, having these connections was really what fueled me. And that's the thing right there, is connecting.
Yeah.
When you're vulnerable, you connect at a very different, deeper level.
It's so true. I think of Brene Brown and that video that she did, that it had a huge effect on me, like a real effect. And I remember reading about, like, she wasn't planning to do that either. And what she was going to do, I have my dog in here and she's like licking her, she's making noises. So that's got, I guess
I can't hear it.
I guess that's got to be part of if you hear
Hey,
it.
it's real.
Yeah. You know what? When I first started doing podcasts, that would make me uncomfortable. Like, so we have these perfectionist things too.
Right.
There she goes. But anyway, isn't that cool? Like, as you do this more and more, and you allow yourself to become vulnerable, then you don't worry about imperfections and things like that.
No, I mean, I'm not going to front, I still have perfect pictures pop up, and, I still have, we're human. Like, I still have imposter syndrome, the perfect pictures. I get afraid. I was on a podcast earlier and I had a little bit of fear, because that perfectionism is still here somewhere, but it doesn't take me over.
Yes. Yeah. So did you have a process, when let's say we're doing videos, or you're on a podcast when you first start, and you have fear pop up, and maybe before you do a video and working on a video, I mean, that has been a journey for me, So
too.
did you have a process or a tool that you used to kind of, when the fear came up for you?
Yeah, so I do the self-talk, like I talk about in the book. And I also set intention for how I envision, the podcast to unfold. So my process is, kind of, I do a little prayer or meditation, quick, it doesn't take long. And then I set the intention for how I'd like it to unfold. And then I remind myself, it is what it is. Like, we're all, like I said, imperfectly flawed. And if I screw up, then I'm learning something.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. And so, the back to the Brene Brown, she wasn't planning, she was planning to just share statistics about vulnerability. And then she said, well, why don't I just, if I'm talking about vulnerability, why don't I just share? And then she just kind of opened up and talked about all her fears. And when you mentioned about connection, that is the best way to connect. And it seems counterintuitive, right? It seems when we have a fear of being vulnerable, and I guess we have a fear about being judged or whatnot.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, so for me to get to where I am today and launch the book, now this is all hindsight, I had to really heal a lot of that. Like I could not have, launched this book without, healing my fear of judgment. Now, do I still, oh my God, I'm going to get judged, and do I feel something? I do, but I let it go, because I wouldn't have been able to move forward in the judgment, because I would have just been weighed down by the fear, and I wouldn't have been able to, show up today or show up at my book launch, because judgment is all around us.
Totally. Yeah. And I noticed it just in my journey, just kind of doing it, even though you have fear. I mean, not if you have this big intuition that says don't do it. I don't do that. I listen to my intuition, or, if I have a feeling, I'm not going to do it for the most part. But what has helped me is just doing it despite the fear, like the podcast or video, and just be accepting that you're not going to be perfect, and you are going to screw up. And like speaking in public was a huge thing for me. And so knowing that, oh, okay, I can pause, or I might forget what I'm going to say and forget my place. And it's funny when you're speaking in public, a short pause seems like forever too. But then how do you get through that? You do it, and then you look back and you go, okay, I didn't die, I'm still alive. It wasn't perfect, and it's okay. And then you look back and you go, that pause, people pause too. So it's all that stuff. Yeah.
And for me, it was more like, okay, it's like me sitting on the couch having a conversation with you. So if I'm sitting on the couch having a conversation with you, it's typically not going to be structured, and I might pause for a very long time, or I might, mince my words. And so, that's what helped me in my podcast. It was like, okay, it's like me sitting down on a couch with you and having a conversation. And that really, when I first started, eased, the fear that I had. And that's how I look at it every time. Like, I'm meeting you on the couch or in a restaurant, and we're going to have a conversation.
That's a great way to think about it. I love that. So can you talk to us about what made you want to write the book? How did the ideas first come up? And then what was that process like for you?
So when when I first got into coaching, the recommendation was, write a book to be more credible. And I'm the type of person that I can't do anything unless I feel like inspired to do it. So it took me a couple years, and finally I was inspired, and I just said, you know what? I wanted to combine the practical and the spiritual, because I really believed in the laws of attraction. And I said, that's what my book's going to be about. And I'm going to kind of pick what were the main concepts that helped me. And I said, okay, I could do this. So just kind of outline those things, that helped me. And it took, I guess from the time I thought about writing a book to the time I was done, it was 5 years. However, I finished it during the pandemic. Well, I did most of it during the pandemic, and then kind of put the pedal on it, the last year to get it launched. And I was just guided every step of the way. If you told me, 5, 10, 20 years ago, as a child, that was never like, I never thought I'm going to write a book ever. So you talk about the universe and being divinely guided. I mean, I've been divinely guided every step of the way, and I have no idea how I got here. I don't even know. This was not what I had planned for my life, but I'm so grateful and so humbled, and it's been incredible. So the universe always knows better than we do, honestly.
Yeah, totally. Now, did you have a process like I'm going to write every day, or or 10 to 12 I'm going to write, or whatnot, or did you wait for inspiration? How was that for you?
That's a great question. Definitely 90% of the time I really needed to be inspired. I mean, there were times that I had to get a chapter out, and um, I didn't feel inspired, but once you start writing, it just comes automatically. And I think the last year when I was like, I just want to get this out, I talked to my publisher and I said, listen, I want to submit a chapter a month to you. And she said, that sounds like a great plan. And so that's what I started to do. I started to get a chapter a month. Now, during the summer times, it wasn't, I think I missed some time because I didn't want to put the pressure on myself. But I set a goal with her and she held me accountable and I held myself accountable. And that's how we did it.
Wow.
And we set a launch date a year ahead of time.
Wow.
So I wanted to launch 11/11/22. So in November of 2021, when I saw that date was available on a Friday, I said, I'm taking it.
Wow.
And yeah,
That's pretty cool.
it was very cool.
So, did you always enjoy writing when you were younger?
I wouldn't say I enjoyed writing. However, that was my way of coping. It's like I journaled a lot.
Mhm.
And to this day, I still journal, not as often as I'd like, but I go through phases. So if I told you, did I like to write? I'd never thought about liking to write, but I did it as a way to cope.
Right. Did you write a lot?
I did. When I was younger, I had journals, and I used to write down my goals. And it's funny, I found some old journals from my parents a while ago. I wish I knew where they were now. And the goals that I had written down, like I achieved like over 95% of what I had written,
Wow.
what I wanted to do. And so there's definitely magic in writing things down.
Yeah. Very cool. And so now, as far as organizing it, because journaling is one thing, but writing a book is another, like organizing it and figuring out what the chapters are going to be and figuring out what's going to be in it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would be so overwhelming for me. So I wanted to ask you how that was for you. And also, did you have someone like a friend or someone else you can let them, bounce off your ideas and let them read some stuff? Like, how was that part of it for you?
No, I didn't. So I thought back, like, okay, on my journey, it's been more than 20 years. I mean, I started reading Tony Robbins when I was 15, but I just thought about, okay, on my journey, what was the first concept that I stepped into that kind of led me? And so that's what I did. I think the first one was self-love. And then I can't remember, but that's how I laid it out. And so as you can see, there's a progression. It starts, with, okay, what's the first step? Well, we have self-love, self-care. And then by the time we come to the end, I don't want to give it away. It goes into the higher level concepts.
Right.
Because in chapter 1, who I was in chapter 1, I wouldn't have understood, the concept in the later chapter. I had to really start here for myself.
Wow. So it almost seems like the way that you wrote the book and your content is very authentic and real, but even the way you organized it, like there's not a lot of pushing or trying to figure something out, or like there's no modeling that you're following really of how you should do it. There's not a lot of shoulds or structure. You just followed your ideas and then it came for you, huh?
Thank you for that, because I'm laughing because as we come into a new year, and I was thinking about business, and you hear all these, you should do this and you should do that. And for, I started throwing the shoulds out the window in 2022. and you can be successful. Are there formulas? Sure. Are there things but as long as you have the intent and you feel in alignment, you can create success or write a book or run a business in a way that feels right for you. And I think we get stuck in the shoulds. I think the shoulds really keep us from doing, from moving forward. It's overwhelming. There's too many shoulds.
I mean, boy, that's another reason why I resonate so much with you, because it totally, and and my journey too, as just as a life coach and as a entrepreneur and in business, I used to grind too. And I read all those different ways of getting clients and having an email list and getting, you talk to 100 people and then 10 are going to be interested and 3 will say yes and all that stuff.
Exactly. It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. It tires you and it actually slows you down, in my opinion.
Totally. And that's how I did business, and I know I talk about this in the book because that's how I was taught. And it was a numbers game. And it still is. You still need to talk to people and take action. Like we need to take action.
We need to take action.
But there came a point where I was like, oh my goodness, like this is overwhelming. I need to stop and run my own race. And if I'm just intentional and I focus on building relationships, I'll be successful and the business will come. And it did. And again, I'm taking it back to the basics in business this year as well. And it's about the quality of the interactions that we have.
Yeah.
And then the intention and the energetics, like, do I need to take action? Yes.
Yeah. And, our journey of grinding, it helps to get us to where we,
For sure.
where we are, and we pick up different things. But when I transferred over from the shoulds to, all right, I'm going to run my business law of attraction approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to act on inspiration instead of motivation, which is shoulds. And so things get so much easier and clearer, kind of like when you're talking about how you wrote that book. And when we're working from inspiration, we have the power of the universe. We're connecting with, I believe, our inner selves,
yeah,
who is always with us, who's connected to the universe. When we're waiting for that inspiration. And here's the funny thing I found in my life: you don't always get inspiration when you want it. Sometimes you're not inspired and you wish you were, or you think you should be. Again, the shoulds.
right.
And so what do you do in that? You relax into it and you're okay when you're not inspired.
Mm-hmm.
So how's your journey been with that? Like the idea of waiting for inspiration instead of acting from maybe motivation or should?
It hasn't been an easy journey because, again, I was taught to hustle and grind, and I'm learning now, like I can incorporate the hustle and grind at my choice.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like a hustle and grind because I'm choosing it.
Right.
There are times that I'm not inspired and I do take action. However, like I said, in the last year, I did the experiment where I was like, okay, like I'm just going to allow myself to be, and I'm not going to push. And I wanted to see what I could create. And it was a successful experience. It was a successful experiment because I didn't work as much and the business was still solid.
Right.
I was putting energy though in being, in having fun, in connecting. And I was still thinking about business, but I didn't make business my only focus.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, like it worked.
Yeah.
And now I'm rejuvenated and refreshed where I'm like, you know what? Like now I'm ready. Like I want to put my focus on business in 2023. And I've learned like, okay, I put a little bit of focus here and some focus here. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And that's a mentality I had with the hustle and grind. It was all or nothing.
Yeah.
And I took pride in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. It is much easier. It can be scarier, but when you kind of let go, things flow easier. Ideas come. And for me, business got better, and it's just, you're not as tired and worn out.
That's
Because
true.
the other way is always thinking and problem solving. What should I do? What's my next move? What should I do? How am I going to bring in money? Because it's not easy to be an entrepreneur.
I
How
get
am I
it.
going to do? How am I going to bring in more money? How am I going to boy, I mean, that even thinking about that is kind of stressful because it can wear on you.
Yeah.
Week after week, month after month, year after year.
I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 24 years in a very challenging business. My main business was staffing, and 75% of, people fail in that industry within the first 6 months to a year. And I've been doing it for 24 years. I've been through 3 recessions. the one in 2009 one was very challenging through the pandemic. And now, I'm experiencing a little bit of the challenge based what's going on outside of us. In 2009, when I experienced whatever, the economic crisis, I was devastated that January. And it felt so challenging and it felt so heavy. Well, going into this January, I'm feeling, the effect of the economic crisis. However, my mindset's very different. And I'm so grateful for that because, back in 2009, it felt terrible and it felt heavy. But, in this time around, I'm like, you know what? I know what I need to do. And I know the universe is great and I trust and I'm in a better place. I'm smarter. And so instead of worrying and focusing on, oh my God, what's going to happen the next few months, I've been scheduling podcasts, connecting, with my staffing clients, connecting with my coaching clients, and just keeping it moving instead of ruminating on the fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about, if that's okay. You had some health challenges for you, and I think you were doing it while you're writing the book, right? And you share that journey with me? Do you mind sharing some of that?
For sure.
Yeah.
So I was super excited. I finished the book's manuscript and we had an incredible 4th of July weekend, with family and friends. So I submitted the manuscript on July 5th. And I had just kind of, poured my heart out. I was so excited. I went from effed up to fabulous and just broke generational cycles. And I could have been a statistic and I wasn't. And then literally 2 weeks later, and I was in great health. I'm very fit. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call from the doctor because I had these 2 growths on my neck. And so they biopsied those growths, and it turned out that it looked like they were cancerous growths on my thyroid, and I had to have a complete thyroidectomy. So that news came on July 19th, literally 2 weeks after I submit my manuscript. I pour my heart out. I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like, WTF. But what an incredible experience and journey. And I do talk about it, in the book, in the epilogue. Had I not been practicing those concepts, I wouldn't have been able, to be as healthy emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually as I was the night before going into surgery to have the thyroidectomy. So I have the thyroidectomy, and remember, that was September 1st. While I'm going through the healing process, I need to go through the manuscript, the draft that the publisher keeps sending back to me 3 times. Like I have to go through the entire thing 3 different times while I'm making an effort to heal. And anyone who's had a thyroidectomy, like it's effed up. Like your energy's shot. You can't push through it. Like you get to a wall, you cannot. And my publisher said, do you want to change the launch date? And I said, no, I picked this day, 11/11/22 last year. Like, I'm going to do this because I don't want you to push. I said, I'm going to do this. And I did it. And we launched on 11/11/22. Was it easy? No, but was I determined? Did I set the intention? Did I stay in that alignment and use the principles? Hell yeah. Because if not, no way I could have done it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you finish the book and then you have this news and you use the principles in the book to help yourself in a way,
I had
right?
to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
It
So
was,
what do you?
it was
Mhm.
incredible. It was an incredible 7 weeks of, and no, I did not share it, because we had some family events coming and I didn't want that to be the topic, but it was incredible 7 weeks of just even more healing and just, I feel like we're constantly rising and we're constantly being able to reinvent ourselves. And that was a time for me to really step in and rise and feel like I shed the old me and I
Yeah.
stepped into the new me.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So, as we look at what happens and we say there's no accidents, and the fact that you found out about this a few weeks after you finished the manuscript, what did you think about that timing and what it meant? And
Absolutely.
yeah. And
Absolutely. I mean, there
what
were
do you,
so many synchronistic events that unfolded from the time that I submitted the manuscript to yeah, it was not a coincidence.
and what do you think about that? Why did it happen after? Why not during? Or, what's going on there? If you,
That's a great question. I think, that's a great question. Let me think about it.
yeah,
Why? I think things unfold as they're meant. I don't think I would have been ready, but it's like our spirit knows,
right.
and it's like we're just continuously divinely guided to the next step.
Yeah,
So I couldn't, had I not gotten to where I was and submitted that book and felt so great, then got the diagnosis, I don't know if I would have been able to navigate it, as well as I did.
yeah. It's so cool. And, you're kind of going through it pretty fast, but you were really challenged. I mean, you've told me about the challenges and the low energy and the days. I mean,
I had a conversation with my doctor, and she was surprised, like when I showed up, that I was like, okay. And she said, you must be someone who's very motivated. So this is remarkable because I've never seen numbers so high. And I want you to know what you're going up against every day is a cement wall. I was like, I just started crying because I didn't realize, the extent of what I was going up against. Like I would just get up and do the best I could each day, while I was healing, because I didn't want to just lay in bed. But
yeah,
again, it goes back to the power of our mind. Like I'm no different than anyone else.
yeah,
We all have that power within us.
yeah. All right, Grace, when's the next book? What's it called? Like, when's the deadline? When's it coming out?
It's unfolding. It's all unfolding. I'm in the second, I call it the second act. I'm living the second act right now. And
Yeah,
as the second act unfolds, I will begin to start, putting the pen to the paper.
yeah. Well, I think you should get started pretty soon. Just kidding. Um,
Yeah, believe me, I've been journaling because I was telling a friend, I really wish I journaled when I was healing, because the manifestations that transpired, like no one would believe it. But I didn't. I wish I did, but everything's hindsight.
well, I just think of if your next book and you're going to share your journey, it's going to be even more and just so much more inspiring and so much more, sharing your badassness and how you got through it. And
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm blessed. I have incredible, people in our life. We have an incredible community.
yeah,
Um, the amount of, encouragement and love and support I've received has been just humbling. And I'm very grateful. It does take a community. It takes a tribe. This is not something that, you do on your own.
for sure. Um, yeah, Grace. So how can people find you? What's the best way? Because I know you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have your podcast, what do you think? How can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, just Grace Redman. I'll pop up. And you can also, if you're interested to, connect with me, you can find me on my website at www.daretoachieve.com.
Yes, ma'am. So just Grace Redman, it's spelled like how it sounds. Nothing
Redman.
fancy there. Yeah. And then your book's on Amazon and where else?
Yes, it's on Amazon. Right now it's on Amazon, so you can
Yeah.
get it there. And it's Can I Live? Dare to Go from Effed Up to Fabulous. And you can also tune into my podcast, Real Talk with Grace Redman. So
Right on. Yeah. So anyone listening, just buy the book, check it out. I'm not just saying this to promote my friend Grace, but it's so good. And again, it's so real. And it's poignant and at the same time simple. I think of like a Bob Marley song, like Bob Marley's
oh,
music. It's simple, but it's deep at the same time. And that's how I felt about your book.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And like I said, thank you to God. I'm so grateful. Like I never anticipated to be here. So you never know what's ahead in life. So you could create whatever you choose.
Right on, Grace. Well, I enjoyed this. Thanks
So
for
did
being on
I.
the
I
podcast.
love chatting with you, Mark.
I always love it, Grace.
Me too.